In previous videos, I've covered what I believe to be the basics of color theory: value, color temperature, cell shading, and while I intend to keep doing that for future video topics, one thing I think is really important to learning color is understanding the situational relationships between colors. I figured the best way to go about this would be to let people submit art to me to cover during streams, and then create a lesson based off of those pieces I feel would be beneficial for everyone to learn. So without further ado, here's episode 1 of Color Criticisms.
The thing that's just striking me, and now her name is Bubblegum, so it's fitting, but the character is very vibrant, and like all of the colors are very vibrant. You can see right away that the values of the character are pretty similar. There's not like any regions that are super distinct, with the exception of like some of these lighter, almost pinky purple regions. But even with those, I think I would do a different shade of white because there is so much pink going throughout the rest of this design that the lighter regions are not being broken up by something that feels like tonally different. The other thing is this blue is not being used anywhere else in the palette other than the knees and the wheels, and it's not even the same color blue. So it feels like the color palette is a little all over the place. They're all within the same 3 color families. All of the hues and saturations are just like slightly different. Low-key, like I kind of want to make the gloves the same color as the band. And my reason for that is actually, it goes back to Gene Kelly. He did this thing. He would wear white socks when he danced and black shoes so that like there was the most contrast in his outfit at his feet so that the viewer's eye would be drawn to it. And what that meant is that it was really easy for people to get kind of like drawn into his dancing. There was a younger lady he was actually training. That's how he helped her learn to dance, was he wore those socks so that it was easier for her to see his foot movements and then imitate them. Now, I don't want to change the design too much. The thing is, if this character weren't named Bubblegum, what I would do is I would use a black for this and almost go for a color palette that looks kind of like old school roller rinks, where they have like the black carpet and then like almost CMYK on them, because I think that looks really fun. So you get in all of those tones that you're hoping to get. I feel like if you're gonna use pink, you're gonna wanna use this same pink for the skin and for the arms, but then it really starts to get like lost because the dress starts to get lost in the character, because then it's like not super duper killing. Oh, although one thing I'm gonna do really quick, because this is like so simple, so easy, so random. I see you're trying to have these antennae be glowing. Let me teach you a very simple trick to make something look like it's glowing. Instead of having to do any real sort of like shading here, take a white that is like very, very close to yellow. Now take the actual color of yellow that the ball originally was and just outline it. And if anything comes in proximity of the glow of this yellow, so like the antenna here, and what that does is it makes it look like it is emitting light, because if it were, it could just be softly glowing, especially if this character was in a dark environment like Muffet, but because this is like a very flat piece, like a reference image for the character, the glow is competing with a white background. So sometimes it's easier to just use the saturation of color to your advantage to make something look like it's glowing. And now from afar, it's like that becomes evident that that's a light source. So there's this crease in the glove here, right? You could just leave the line art the exact color that it is, but if you wanted to make it clear that this crease is on the glove, you can instead use line art color of this pink anywhere the glove overlaps onto itself, and that just makes it look like it's 2 pieces of white fabric right up next to each other. It's not even shading, but like what it does is add variance to your color palette so that your lines don't feel so like unalive. They don't feel like line art. They start to feel like, I don't know, they just feel like you're containing objects within them. Similarly, I would probably do the inside of the gloves that same color. Also, the sparkles in the hair are so cute. I like them too. I actually want to keep that. The only thing I'm gonna say, and again, this comes from personal bias, I do not like gradients, so what I'm probably going to do is if I'm doing anything to the hair, I'm going to grab one of the pieces of color and then just make it all a solid blue, but I will not get rid of the lighter blue, I promise. I will reuse it, I just won't do a gradient because I am a bit of a gradient hater, I'm sorry. I find that gradients make a palette so difficult to work with for so many different mediums and like inhibits what you can do with shading so much because you're constantly trying to basically like dance around a gradient. If I was gonna use the blues for anything, I thought about almost doing it like the top is darker and then having the, as it gets closer to the face and frames the face getting lighter. The one thing that's kind of tripping me up here, I think, is the line art color for the hair. So this is the line art color for the hair, right? And this is the line art color for the body. It's not to say you can't have more than one kind of line art color, but I think because the dark blue is only used in the hair, it just feels like, it feels off. Like I'm trying to figure out where else in the design we can utilize it. It's not that they can't go together, but there's no separation between any of these like super saturated values. And I think that that's what's getting to me. I feel like the thing that would actually benefit this design based off of like the rhythm of the design is like to make the hair white. The sad thing is I did like the stars in the hair. I thought that was cute, but I have an idea. I have an idea to bring it back. I am a sucker for star-shaped things in everything, and I think star-shaped antenna would just be really cute. Now, if we are going for that CMYK palette that I brought up, what I might do is instead of CMYK, so instead of having black, I might use this kind of cream or like this white color in its place because it is a neutral color and it'll be able to divide these very like saturated colors without making them look like they're vibrating against each other. Has anyone heard of the red ball theory in character design? Okay, so what it is in character design, if you're working for a client and they've hired you to do something, sometimes the way to make a client happy is to add something that is glaringly, obviously not very harmonious with the rest of the design, but doesn't piss you off so bad that if they didn't like it, or if they do wind up liking it, you won't like be bashing your head into a wall forever. Because what it does is most people with design sense will recognize that the red ball, so to speak, shouldn't be there. So like, for example, like literally doing it right now, I would just put like an orb, like quite literally a red ball on the design that's not the color of anything else, just put it right there in the middle of the design. Usually when you're working with like corporate entities, they like to have things to say. They like to have additions and suggestions to make. And so by adding the red ball, you are giving them feedback that they can give you and say like, oh, this looks good, but could we remove that thing? And something about feeling like they contributed makes them feel good. So I always say design bigger, design a little crazier than maybe you need to go, so that when your client or whatever project you're working on knocks you back a peg and says, okay, looks good, but could we remove that thing, that thing, that thing? They get to feel like they've contributed, but you still get a design that you like because they haven't removed like the core and soul of your design. Also, just so you know, this is the same yellow that's used for the antenna. So this is, again, what I mean by like recycling colors in your palette. The more frequently you can use colors, the more you can stay locked into like a color palette of reoccurring colors, the stronger your color palette is going to feel, because it feels like everything belongs and like you didn't just pick something off. And this is for designs. Paintings, sometimes picking random shit off the color picker because it looked good there is actually good and encouraged. So you have to understand that all advice I give you is highly dependent on what kind of piece it is we're talking about. I like the pink, but because the pink of the glasses is such a similar shade to the pink of the skin, I feel like it's almost getting a little lost. So there's two different things, two different approaches I could see us taking here. There's one where you make the glasses literally rose tinted glasses. You make them a little lighter of a pink, almost like the color of the dress, so that it brings the tones of the hair into the tone of the skin. My other thought was having the glasses either be blue or yellow, and I don't think I like the yellow, so we might go with blue. I am really wondering where I can bring in that galaxy pattern though, because I quite liked it. Or maybe we just leave it with a star. Actually, I also kind of think the tail being ended in a star. Plus, it keeps the star used throughout multiple points in the design, which is fun. Honestly, to be so for real, I feel like the boots should be the same color as the dress. See, but now what's bothering me, I just wonder if like it'd be crazy to do this. See, the sleeves, it might need it. But there, I think the sleeves are doing it a bit in my opinion. How about yellow sleeves? I could do yellow sleeves. I just feel that these two colors are too similar. They aren't vibrating because they're not super saturated. I think that because they're desaturated, it helps. So my reason for doing this is because then if there are pinks, at the very least, the pinks are of different shades as they're up against each other. But I don't know if I like that either. No, I don't. I simply do not. The only other thing I could think to do is just leave the sleeves pink, which would also be fine. Because I don't even think that looks bad. But if you were going for a more kind of like 70s like cosmic looking character, I think the white sleeves, it reminds me of like old Star Trek. Catboy color once, to me the wheels of it kind of get missed very easily, especially on the white background because they're not being contrasted by anything. A mid or dark blue ring in the center of each could draw attention to that, like how Critter was talking about the tap dancer. Plus I think they'd look good if they were bigger, just like the design's big chunky shoes. Okay, wait, so can I say something? Can I have my evil rock moment? Because I completely agree with you, Lexicog. I'm gonna like paint these and make them a little nicer looking, but like personally, I think this is where you bring back the stripe from the hair, is you, because there's 3 wheels and then there's the 3 colors. Now, so for the knee pads, I actually think I'm not gonna do this glowing blue. I'm gonna do the glowing yellow, and I'm gonna bring the star back again, because we do love a star motif here on 4-Leaf Island. Well, okay, hold on. Let me see if I believe it when I zoom out. No, I don't. Okay, get out of here. I think the last thing for the knee pads, honestly, is I'm just gonna do the blue. I think the trouble is because it's right up against the white. It's like, do I like it? It looks like it's getting absorbed into the boot. Other than just literally making it yellow, like not glowing yellow, like just actually making them yellow stars, which may be the only other option we have left, is bringing this yellow in. Oh, that was the answer. Okay. Like, truly, that was just the answer all along. Okay, that's fine. There are, like, many other things that you could do, that you could add or take away from this color palette, but really quick, I'm gonna lay out the colors as I changed them, basically, and, like, what we did differently here versus what was done in the base. For starters, this cream color is used basically throughout the entire palette. Then the pink is the same pink that was used in the original palette, and I kept that because that is a very bubblegum color to me. Like, I feel like changing that would have changed like the soul of the design, so I didn't want to take that away. This yellow is used everywhere now. It is the yellow that's on the cheeks, it's the yellow that's on the tail, it's the yellow that's on the knee pads. That just keeps kind of a harmony going with all of the design. And then this is that color. That is the blue that's used in the streak and in the wheels. Really, the thing that I'm seeing most with this design, like if I wanted to spend more time with it, is I would like this blue to be present more throughout. I don't think it's necessary per se, because I think that like it looks good still. If I was crazy, what I would do is instead of having the antenna glow yellow and the tail glow yellow, I would actually have it glow blue. So the biggest changes that I think that I made for the dress. So the dress, this is the main dress color. This is the dress crease color, because that plays kind of an important role of making it look kind of like a pale pink bubblegum. And then the overall line art color, I changed from being a more purple magenta to being like kind of a dark red. Other than that, I did not change much about the color palette. I think pretty much everything unchanged otherwise. This is the color palette like broken down to its essentials. So for this specific piece, what I was thinking of, I might just like very loosely trace over, because it's not about the art itself, it's about the color choices. I'm gonna do my best to keep it as close to the original art as possible, just to read out what Tanuki said about this piece specifically. They said, "I'm having a hard time making the reds and purples from Muffet's original design work together, and especially on finding a background color. The main focus I wanted in this is on the vibrancy of the tea, similar to how it feels in the game." The first thing I really want to nail in, and I think that I'm seeing here, one of the reasons that like Undertale's characters pop from the background so much is their use of kind of like dark backgrounds. It's not to say that's the only way that you can make colors pop, but it's like if you're trying to make a saturated color look vibrant, look like almost glowy, using black or like a very dark blue or very dark purple are pretty surefire ways to do that. The other thing that I'm seeing here too is that Muffet's arms are actually darker than the main parts of her body, and I think that will help with the contrast and kind of create like visual intrigue, but I can fix those very shortly. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I am going to darken your background. I also see that you have like some like patterns, some ripples here, so maybe I'll like imitate that by using a blue. or even like going into purple. We'll see. Hold on. Honestly, I think that it looked fine as it was. The other thing I want you to see is that the tea color that you used when eyedropping is not the same. Now that's fine, because while eyedropping can be helpful for some pieces, it is good to try and train your eye to pull things out yourself. But the first thing that I saw with this is that the tea in the screenshot is a much warmer color of purple. If you wanted to make it literally just like the exact colors that Muffet's tea is in the screenshot, this is the color that it is in the screenshot, and I actually think that it goes kind of fun with the purple that you've used here as like a highlight color. The only other thing that I might include is like almost a bluer tone. That's not quite it. But the reason that I do this is just so that even as it's a warmer color than the background, there's still some color here that's keeping it, like bringing it closer to the cool color of the background. Now I'm looking and I'm like the cooler reflectiveness is nice, but now I'm like, maybe it needs a darker tone too. Okay, I did want to grab the arm color, and it looks like those are like kind of a dark purple, because that wasn't like majorly important, but I do think that it'll help really solidify Muffet's design. The final thing that I'm seeing here is like this outline color. And I feel like we could do something with it, because as it is now, I don't know if it suits the darker background as much. And I think the answer is actually to make a saturated color palette, you have to use some desaturated colors. Like you cannot only have super saturated colors, or else like your midtones will look like everything will just vibrate against each other. So one of the things that I'm looking at here with the outline color, so the thing that you start to see when you have a dark background, I think that you don't necessarily need this like light outline. So I'm going to like just test to see if that's correct. When you have a dark background with a character that's a little lighter, it means that the character kind of stands out against the background a little more, which is what I was seeing Undertale do here. So when things get farther away from the viewer, like they get farther into the environment away from the subject of the piece, and in this instance, the subject of the piece is Muffet, they tend to get closer to the color of the environment. And in most instances, like when you're outside, the color of your environment is blue, or if it's sunset, it's orange. But because the color of Undertale's environment is underground, and black is usually used as the background color for those environments, that means that when something gets farther away from the viewer, it's going to get darker, which is why I find that it helps to not only help make a character pop, to make them like just their normal flat colors, but also when things get farther away, you can have them almost kind of like vanish into the background by making them turn darker, go closer to black. And what I'm thinking is one of the best things you can do for the consistency of a color palette is recycle colors. Let's say there was something else that was like this color blue. Actually, a really good example of this is that in Muffet's base color palette, the color of her face is the same as the color of her teapot. Changing that in the piece, there's nothing wrong with that, though actually I would love to bring this teal back somewhere else in the piece, possibly in the form of like spider webs. I feel like you could do something really fun with that. And what you could even do is, with this example of what I'm about to show, you could use this lighter color for foreground spider webs, and then this darker color for background spider webs. But the first thing before we do any of that noise, I am going to grab the background colors and I'm gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna have the tea kind of like, oh, and the other important thing is this purple that I'm using now, it's like an opacity trick but on flats. You're literally just taking a darker or more saturated version of the color to make it look like it's going farther back into the environment. To my point, this color that I'm using, the purple, is the color of the line art that Tanuki used in the original piece. So it's recycling the line art color while still being a darker purple and helping Muffet stand out from her background. I really think the use of purple line art was clever too, because Muffet herself, like that is like her soul color. And it's like little color uses like that I think really make a piece like fun. Like you can tell that the person likes and cares about the thing that they're doing. But anyway, as you can see here, what happens happens with this purple value, because it's darker than the kind of foreground highlighted purple, is it just makes everything in the foreground kind of come forward a bit. By creating a background, it like allows for foreground elements to feel more close to the screen. We could almost make it a little darker, but I'll play with it, I'll see. So the reds, the first thing that I'm seeing is actually just that you didn't push the shading enough with the, I mean, actually in general, the shading of Muffet here, it's not bad. It's just, for the environment, it doesn't look adjusted to the other colors that you have going. I think using this purple as like a base, like a starting color, is not a bad thing. But this here, honestly, could come closer to purple. We're gonna try that. The original Muffet's outfit colors are this, which is pretty orange. Now that I'm looking at it, that's more saturated. I wonder if there's a way to grab something that's like right in between. And then if you were gonna shade, going down more into like, would you go more into a purple? That seems like it would be like environmentally correct, but I'm actually not sure if I would do that because she is also in like kind of a dark environment. Ooh, but not gray, not gray. It's so much easier to adjust colors when you have like a background set, I feel like. I do think we're maybe getting closer to what you were asking help for though, which is like Muffet with her base color palette with more vibrant tea color and not like kind of disappearing into the background. So I think those things have been achieved, and you weren't asking about like environmental integration because this was meant to just be like a piece. I'm assuming this is just meant to be like a piece of the character, not with like any focus on the background. The other thing is there's no like actual direct light source, of course, because again, she is just kind of underground, which makes like placing any cells of color hard. So I think this can be similar, but then this darker color is gonna have to be much darker. And I'm almost of the mind that like you could use the line art color that you're using for the red to shade the sleeves. And because there's not gonna be a lot of really harsh light on those sleeves, you know, we don't have like any crazy light sources or anything going on here. And what it would do is just kind of create some like nice harmony to your piece. It's not a shading with black situation, but it's more like shading with your line art color. I think you should use purple to shade. I think you should use the line art purple for the dark sections of her hair because it creates more contrast that way. And then it also brings that into the color palette. And it just like makes it so vibrant and fun. Cause like, look what happens when you do that. It kind of makes things pop a little bit. Sometimes genuinely with cell shading, like less is more, because if you have too many shadows and they don't work in tandem with each other, it can look just like variance in the coloring, which is not bad by any means. It's more just like it can stop reading as shadows. She's like flopping her head that way, so there would be some shadow. I actually feel like the shadow would actually be more like here, even though I put it there for a second. Because if she's flopping her head that way, then the shadow would be coming down the side of her head. I saw you left the outside of the red sections with a purple outline. That is okay, like that is completely up to you. But if you wanted to make it clear that those things are red, sometimes carrying the line art color to the outside of the line art can help them. I don't know, something about the color red, it sometimes feels like it's glowing, especially in a dark background. You'll see it like in Perfect Blue. Sometimes Mima's dress is like outlined in a different color, especially if it's pink. Like they'll outline her pink dress using red, but like the rest of her body using just like the baseline art color. And I don't know what it is about like outlining something a different color. It like makes things look like they're glowing. It makes them look like much more vibrant. I think maybe because you're like drawing a distinction between that object and the others. And specifically when we think of line art, it's like a finality note. It's like the divide between two different objects. So if the divide between two different objects is not a dark line, like almost like a shadow being cast between the two of them, and is instead a lighter color, it kind of makes the brain think like, oh, that thing's like radiant, it's glowing. Now with Muffet's face shading, that is the one thing that I was thinking about as I was doing this. And I'm like, I feel like I'm just gonna experiment. I'm gonna see how I like it. I'm just gonna like kind of make all of the face skin the same color for a very brief moment, and you'll see why. Muffet is blue, like she's very blue, but because the tea color is warmer, I'm almost of the mind that like it'll make her look more like she's alive and also make her look more harmonious with the like Yeah, and it does. It makes her look more harmonious with red. I'm also gonna like kind of shade her eyes to make her look like evil, or just like this. Actually, wait, this is cute. This is cute. Like the across the face shading. The only other thing that I'm like thinking that I could do too is like there was formerly shading on Muffet's legs when it was the same as her skin color in your original piece. But what I would do is I'd probably shade those using the purple of the line art now that they're a little darker. I think the only other thing that I could really do with this if I like wanted to was put like use the teals for like spider webs, which is not necessary, but like I'm curious to see what it would look like. I could also do that. Hold on. So layer, dupe. In the original like test that I was doing with this, I had like there be a blue gradient coming up from the bottom. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look great either though. I honestly prefer, but this is just me because I'm like definitely more a 2D artist than like high def rendered anime art. I kind of prefer how crisp just the plain background one is. So let's do some spider webs. See how that looks. I might hate it. Who knows? I might draw it and be like, that looks bad. So Beep said, I'm really struggling to make it look like it's a dark underwater cave with light filtering through without completely losing the creature and the blood. I feel like the colors look wrong. Maybe I used the wrong colors for the light. I'm gonna do two different versions because it depends what kind of water we're talking about. If this were an underwater cave in the ocean or like in salt water, the water is going to look bluer. So the light and the colors that we would use would be different. But if this were water that were like in a lake or in fresh water, the watercolors might look more green. So what that does is it changes the way that we would be doing a lot of these kind of like light pieces. But one of the things that I'm seeing here is that even though this is meant to be underwater, they colored the environment like it was still above water, which is like understandable. Like logically speaking, you don't really think of water as like having a color because water when it's not pooled is clear. Even so, water does cause color variance depending on like what kind of water we're talking about first and foremost, but also like where that water is and like how deep it is. It also changes variance in like the way that certain things look. That comes down to like understanding there's a video that I wish I could find, but it was a video of like a diver taking a bunch of like kids' ring toys underwater with him as he went deeper and showing how the colors were affected by the light filtration changing the deeper the water got. Here's what I was trying to show. The deeper that these objects are brought, the color changes. I think my favorite part is that the reds and the browns, like the warm colors, they just kind of become like gray. And then the greens get more and more and more vibrant. Well, yellow just became green. The orange kind of stays visible because I can see where they were going for with this, right? Like they were trying to make it clear that this yellow was light filtering down. They were coloring their character basically like how they thought their character, how their character probably is colored typically. And they're using like black and other darker colors at the bottom to show depth. That's not wrong. The theory, it's not wrong in theory. Where it fails in execution is that they forgot to kind of color the water as an object itself, first and foremost. And secondly, they forgot that the color of the water is going to affect the color of their subject as well. Really quick, I'm just gonna draw like a little guy. Because the character is like underwater, they're going to be darker because they're underwater and also the light source is above them and we're like looking up. They're going to basically be like a shadow against the light source and this is going to help them stand out more. But if you still want to have like segments that are clear that are skin color, you can do that. You would just go for a almost purple desaturated version of the skin color. And actually, maybe it's not even purple, maybe it's gray. It's gray! It's always gray. The brown is the one that's like most interesting. It just becomes dark and you move it a little over to gray to show warmth. That's it. Now, the thing that's interesting is that the blood is probably actually going to be very similarly colored to the brown of the hair as it gets deeper. So like you could even make it kind of red closer to the surface. The other thing is as the blood pools, it's also going to diffuse into the water, which could look something like this. Depends on how you want to do it. Grab this color, bring it like ever so slightly warmer. So the answer was literally just to go to red and make a red that is as dark as this brown is. So don't change the value, don't change like how dark it is, but change the saturation by moving your color slider, and that's how you make it look like blood. The other thing is, if you want to make like a shape or like an object underwater look big, take this shape and kind of like just airbrush it around the outsides as it's getting deeper, because it's going to be affected by the light too. It's just going to be affected less. The only trouble is that this blood is getting too light over top of the dragon. So one thing you could do is you could literally just move the blood beneath the dragon. But if you weren't doing that, you could color the blood black over top the dragon to show that it's going over. That's just if you really wanted to show that it's overlapping, and I don't think it's necessary to do that. Oh, you know, the other thing that I should have done is that this shadow should get darker the closer it gets to the subject. That's the other thing. And if you want to have some of this green here, reuse the green from the boots, go down to the dragon. Actually, I wonder if this green would work as a illumination color because it's close to the color. Oh, it does. Ha, that's so funny. The pupil color is the color you can use for the illumination because it's closer to the actual color of the skin of the dragon. You know what else the pupil color is? The color of teeth underwater, especially if the teeth are like yellowed at all. That's green, but it looks white because of the fact that the character is underwater. Some other flourishes that you can add are just specks of light, things that are floating in the water, because like any natural water source is not gonna be clean enough to not have nothing in it. You can go more light and use a lighter brush and go air bubbles. Air bubbles are like a super easy way to like let someone know that something is like water, because without them, well, you're probably dead. If you have something that catches light as it reaches near the surface, you could just change the hue. Honestly, I would make it a more saturated blue because it is still a light object. Now it's still visible. The other thing you could do is like if there's like outside the water environment stuff. Honestly, I'm still learning water myself personally. I'm pretty happy with this one.